I want to speak to you on a subject that, for the most part, has been ignored and not really addressed from the pulpits of our churches across America, and that is the value of disciplining a child. The value of disciplining a child. Many in our culture today consider disciplining a child to be old-fashioned and archaic. As a matter of fact, secular humanistic psychiatrists and psychologists have convinced many parents that it's good for a child to, and I quote, express themselves, and boy do we see them expressing themselves today, and that discipline only warps their character. And so the word discipline has become a negative concept in our culture today. I want to talk about discipline here this morning. The word discipline simply means training to act in accordance to rules. Now you ought to jot that down somewhere because that's the true meaning of discipline. I'm not going to address the issue today of how to discipline your child. Not going to go there. But I do want to really emphasize the importance of discipline within the context of the home. And I want to address this: training to act in accordance to rules. Every family needs to establish rules in their home. And then they need to have the proper discipline to enforce those rules. Rules teach a child that there are boundaries in life. That's important for children to know today. Rules also help to establish what is right and what is wrong in the mind of a child. The confusion that we have in our culture today about what is right and what is wrong really stems back to a lack of discipline in the home. One of the best ways to destroy your child is to never have any rules or boundaries in your home. As parents, we need to understand that establishing rules in the home is not only for the good of our children, but it's also for the good of our community and of our society. When we practice discipline in the home, it helps a child to understand that there are negative consequences associated when he violates the rules that have been established. Now, the opposite is also true. When parents fail to practice discipline in the home, a child grows up thinking that he can do whatever he wants to do with no consequences associated with his actions. Listen to me carefully, because when you refuse to discipline your child, you are not doing your child a favor. You're not. It may be the road of least resistance right now, but ultimately you are setting that child up for failure in his adult life. The lack of establishing rules and boundaries within the context of the home or the family has affected every aspect of our culture and our society. No discipline in the home has affected our schools. Just ask the teachers. No discipline in the home has affected our churches. Just ask the Sunday school teachers. No discipline in the home has populated our courts and our prisons. Just ask those who are involved in law enforcement. Here's my point. If we want our children to grow up and to become decent, respectful citizens in society, we have to practice discipline in the home. Now, I want us to look at one verse in the book of Ephesians chapter 6. And verse 4 deals with the value of disciplining a child. And we just want to spend a few minutes this morning. My intention is not to keep you long, but I want to talk a little bit about the value and the importance of discipline in the home. And I hope today that those of you who still have young children at home, that you especially will sit up and listen and understand what God is saying to us here in Ephesians 6 and verse 4. Look at the verse, please. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Allow me to read that verse one more time. Ephesians 6, verse 4. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I draw your attention to that last statement, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Because that last statement there in verse 4 is essentially saying to us that God demands that there be discipline in the home. God demands it. The Bible doesn't say if you get around to it, or if you happen to think about it, or if this is something you might want to do or consider doing. But no, the Bible dogmatically states, bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. The them there is children. Bring them. Bring the children up in the nurture and the admonition of the Lord. Now, I want us to do some word studies here this morning that will help us to better understand what God is telling us to do here in Ephesians 6 and verse 4. Notice that word bring. That word bring is the same Greek word that you find back in chapter 5, verse 29. Look at chapter 5, verse 29. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. So that word bring that we find in chapter 6, verse 4 is the same Greek word that you find back in chapter 5, verse 29 that is translated nourisheth. The idea behind the word is to cherish. And so the word bring, you may want to circle it there in your Bible. The word bring means to cherish. It means to value as special. Now, let me camp out here just for a moment, all right? In chapter 5, verse 29, the husband is to what? Cherish his wife. And in chapter 6, verse 4, the father is to cherish his children. Men, listen to me just for a moment. Your wife is a gift from God, therefore you are to cherish her. I want to repeat that, men. Your wife is a special gift from God, therefore you are to cherish her. All husbands need to view their wife as a valuable and special gift that God has given to them.